Howdy, folks. Vegetarianism is a really hot topic today. There are a lot of people who practice different forms of vegetarianism. Some practice a modified form where they can have certain kinds of animal products but not others. Other people avoid all animal products altogether. And some people do this for what they believe are health reasons. And I respect people who make the sacrifices that are needed in order to do that. Whether or not it really can be of health benefit to avoid all animal products is something that is a matter of science rather than a matter of faith, so I'm not going to be discussing that here, but I do want to acknowledge that there are sacrifices to be made in following any kind of strict diet, and for those who, for health reasons, practice vegetarianism, my hat's off to them, literally. Now, it's different when it comes to religious reasons for vegetarianism, at least in the case of Judaism and Christianity. There are some religions out there that are vegetarian, and for people who practice those religions, I recognize the sacrifice that they're making. But when people try to claim that Christianity or Judaism imply that we ought to be vegetarian, there's a problem. There are even some websites out there that will claim that Jesus himself was likely a vegetarian, and that's something we're going to look at. So, what does the Bible say about the subject of eating meat? Well, originally, if you look in the first chapter of Genesis, God gives Adam and Eve permission to eat from plants. And no mention is made one way or another of meat, but the explicit permission that's given is for them to eat plants. Then, after the great flood in Genesis 9, God gives explicit permission to eat meat. Noah has just performed a valuable service. He's helped preserve the animal population through the great flood, and as a reward for that labor, God now gives express permission to eat meat. And he says, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, and as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything." At the time of the Exodus, God instituted the Passover sacrifice, and you can read about that in Exodus chapter 12. He also, once the children of Israel left Egypt, instituted a sacrificial system that involved animal sacrifice. And if you want to read about that, you can look in Leviticus chapters 1 through 9. It's quite extensive and in its description, and it even gets down into some details of how the animal sacrifices are to be done and what's to be done specifically with different parts of the animals that you might even need to have some background as a butcher to fully appreciate. He also commanded that the Jewish people celebrate the Passover, which involved an animal sacrifice. In Deuteronomy 16, God commands, "Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. And you shall offer the Passover sacrifice to the Lord your God from the flock or the herd." And eating meat wasn't just something that was reserved for Passover. It was something that could be done at any time of the year. If you look in Deuteronomy 12, you'll see that it says, "When the Lord your God enlarges your territory, as he has promised you, and you say, 'I will eat flesh,' because you crave flesh, you may eat as much flesh as you desire. If the place which the Lord your God will choose to put his name there is too far from you, then you may kill any of your herd or your flock which the Lord has given you, as I've commanded you, and you may eat it within your towns as much as you desire." So it was quite accepted, and express permission was given by God for the Israelites to eat meat, and it was even required at Passover. Now, you might say that this is all Old Testament stuff that doesn't apply to us today, at least if we're Christians. Okay, fair enough. Let's look at what the New Testament has to say. One of the things that is often overlooked in this discussion is the fact that Jesus drew his core disciples from a particular occupation. All four of the core disciples, Peter and Andrew and James and John, were fishermen. And of course, fish are animals, and fishermen go out and seek them and catch them, and they end up dying and getting eaten as a result. And what that means is that Jesus' core disciples were not just hunters, they were professional hunters. You could say, well, Jesus, said, "I'll make you fishers of men." Maybe he, was implying something negative about their profession. Well, that would be kind of hard to square with this account. At the beginning of his ministry, Jesus once preached from Simon Peter's boat, and when he had ceased speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a great shoal of fish, and as their nets were breaking, they beckoned to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats, so that they began to sink. So Jesus, far from criticizing their profession, actually helped in a mass animal hunt. And that wasn't the only time. After the resurrection, the disciples were again out fishing on the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus called to them from the shore. It was a little too far for them to see him clearly, but they heard his voice, and he said, "Children, have you any fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in for the quantity of fish. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire there, with fish lying on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew that it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. So you see what this means. Jesus himself was a serial accomplice to mass animal hunts. But was he himself a vegetarian? Well, in Luke 24, there on the beach, Jesus tells the disciples, "See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit has not flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And while they still disbelieved for joy and wondered, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it before them. So Jesus not only helped with mass animal hunts, he also ate animals himself. Now, this doesn't mean that anything goes with respect to animals and that wanton cruelty is justified. It doesn't mean anything like that. Animals are part of God's creation, and they thus are part of what mankind has to steward. That means take care of. Mankind is allowed to draw benefit from creation, but he's also responsible for taking care of it. And a balanced attitude is expressed in the Catechism of the Catholic Church when it comes to animals. According to the Catechism, God entrusted animals to the stewardship of those whom he created in his own image, which is mankind. Hence, it is legitimate to use animals for food and clothing. They may be domesticated to help man in his work and leisure. Medical and scientific experimentation on animals is a morally acceptable practice, if it remains within reasonable limits and contributes to caring for or saving human lives. It is contrary to human dignity to cause animals to suffer or die needlessly. It is likewise unworthy to spend money on them that should, as a priority, go to the relief of human misery. One can love animals. One should not direct to them the affection due only to persons. You may have heard the slogan, "A rat is a pig, is a dog, is a boy." This puts animals on the same level as human beings, and it's an extreme that must be rejected. But that doesn't mean that we should not care about animals or that we shouldn't take care of animals. In fact, we should do both. But we should recognize that they aren't humans and that they can be used for food.